May the words of my mouth and the meditation of our hearts be acceptable to you, O God, our strength and our salvation. Amen. A couple of summers ago, I led an adult study about the life of the disciples. Many of the participants commented that they identified with Simon Peter. People seem to relate to Peter because he's so human. He had a tendency to put his foot in his mouth and say just the wrong thing at just the wrong time. He was familiar with the challenge of being faithful to Jesus in a crowd of unbelievers. Peter had this tremendous desire to follow Jesus, even when it meant he had to get out of the boat and walk on water. And Peter demonstrated the same type of panic we experience when God calls us to step out into the unknown. Peter has a lot to teach us about the challenges of discipleship, but even more important, we learn a lot about the love of God as we watch how Jesus embraces Peter. In today's gospel, we encounter another disciple who dealt with his fair share of challenges. Thomas is referred to by a couple of nicknames in the Gospels, but the one he's most famous for is Doubting Thomas. If you look up this phrase in the dictionary, you'll find something like one who habitually or instinctively doubts or questions. In other words, a doubting Thomas is someone who lags behind in faith, someone who needs more proof, more time. It describes someone who has a hard time trusting others. I feel for Thomas. How would you like it if your name went down in history connected to words like skeptic and disbeliever? Personally, I think Thomas has gotten a bum rap. He wasn't the only disciple that showed signs of doubt after Jesus' resurrection. Mary Magdalene saw the empty tomb twice, but she didn't believe that Jesus had risen from the dead until he appeared to her and spoke to her directly. At the end of Matthew's gospel, we are told that Jesus appeared to the 11 disciples on a mountain in Galilee. Even as the disciples were worshiping the risen Christ, Matthew tells us that some of them doubted. And let's not forget our fan favorite Peter. He wasn't initially convinced that Jesus had risen from the dead, and he got to see the actual grave clothes lying in the place where they had been wrapped around Jesus' crucified body. Let's be honest. Jesus' resurrection from the dead defies all reason. There's no logical explanation for what happened on that first Easter morning. Of all the fantastic, miraculous stories about Jesus, stories about him healing paralytics, walking on water, driving out demons, this is a story that we have to embrace by faith. But even faith is a mystery of the heart that the mind wants to solve. There's a part of us that wants evidence, and without evidence, inklings of doubt begin to emerge. I imagine that most of you have felt doubt at one time or another. I know that I have. I have experienced seasons of doubt where I wrestle with questions of disbelief and feelings of uncertainty. And we are in good company. Listen to this list of people who have struggled with doubt: Mother Teresa, C.S. Lewis, Pope Francis, John Calvin, and Martin Luther himself. Doubt has always been part of the Christian experience. It is not a sign of weakness or an indicator of unbelief. It is an aspect of being human. And it can often be a catalyst that helps to draw us deeper into faith. God does not leave us alone with our fear and doubt. God comes to us in our darkest moments with the light of love and peace. God understands our tendency to allow doubt to creep into our way of thinking. He knows about our need for proof when it comes to believing miraculous things. Jesus provided proof for his disciples. On that first Easter evening, Jesus appeared in the room where the disciples were hiding behind locked doors. After greeting them with peace, Jesus stretched out his